Today's episode is presented by Lodestar, the fee experts.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Lending Leaders. My name is Alayna Gardner, and today I'm joined by Skip Willcox, AMP, and CMB,
That's
all
right.
of the
The letters.
letters, and the president at Kairos Sales Group. So thank you so much, Skip, for joining me today.
I appreciate it, Alayna. Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here.
It's great. So you recently started your sales group.
Mhm.
And one thing that, upon looking at your LinkedIn and just kind of knowing you is, there's a tough balance that someone has to walk when starting a company and you still have a day job. And I think there are a lot of people right now that might be thinking about doing something similar, might be thinking, maybe I should start a consulting company, or maybe I
Right.
should do this. How do you walk that line and invest in your dream while still giving it your all at work?
Yeah, well, that's actually a really great consideration, because one of the things that you have to be sure to do is you can't bite the hand that feeds you. So you have your day jobs. You still have to be sure that you're giving it, what you need to give there. But there's only so much of everybody to go to, that can go around. So it really comes down to being able to budget your time properly. Um, as you mentioned, I'm the vice president of Crescent Mortgage, founder and president of Kairos Sales Group. I also have the Big Skip Energy podcast, which is what you were just recently on.
Yes.
So for everybody listening, if you haven't checked it out, you should, because Alayna does a jam up job. All right. So, but yeah, back to your question, it's really, really important that you segment your time properly, because if you go into it expecting that you can just shift gears on a dime and do a little bit of this and a little bit of that throughout your day, you're going to set yourself up for failure. Can some of that exist? Yeah, absolutely. Of course it can. But for anybody that's listened to my show or had trainings with me, they're going to recognize the fact that I thoroughly and completely believe that multitasking is a lie. I think you end up doing a bunch of things crappy instead of one thing really well. And so, segmenting time helps prevent that, in my opinion. So that's one of the biggest things. And Alayna, is it okay if I go ahead and talk a little bit about kind of why I started it, that kind of thing?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So I've been in the mortgage business for my entire career. I started out in secondary marketing, and now I'm now I'm a wholesale account executive. So I still actively sell. But in between that, I had a long career as a loan originator too. So one of the things I started noticing several years ago were that people would say, "Hey, Skip, you've done this, you've done this. Do you have any suggestions, ideas?" We started bouncing ideas, and before I knew it, I started working with people on a formal, actual, like, real basis, not just randomly, to try and help them grow their business. And kind of carried on with that here and there until the COVID boom ended. And I started seeing a lot of need out there. A lot more people started to approach me and say, "Hey, Skip, I need some help. Do you have any advice for me? Can we start doing this or that or the other?" And one of the things I wanted to be sure that I did as well, just being a lifetime mortgage industry guy, is I wanted to try and make sure that a lot of the people that may have entered the mortgage business for the right reasons during the COVID boom could remain that way. And so there was a very, very large gap between active selling skills and order taking. And people had been so used to taking orders during the COVID boom, they were like, "I love this business. I love what it does. I love what I do, but I don't know how to go out there and get it and build a book of business and actually carry a real sales pipeline." And so one of the things that I wanted to try and do was help people do that. And before I knew it, I was like, you know what? I got to make this thing formal. So I found a Kairos Sales Group, and I've been very fortunate to be able to coach dozens of people and do group trainings for many companies. And it's been a very, very good and rewarding experience. So I have no regrets about doing it.
No, that's fantastic. I think every consulting company in some level has kind of started it with just people approaching you, asking you questions, saying, "Hey, I really like what you're doing. How do I do that? How do
Right.
I gain those skills?" And I think that's so important. And I think, that's what it means to be a leader on some levels, right?
Mm.
So for you, what does it mean to be a sales leader? You've taken on this role and this responsibility in the industry to say, I'm an expert. I know what I'm doing here.
Hmm.
Or so we say, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and what goes into it beyond numbers of, oh, you should make X amount of calls a day. You should do this. You should
Hmm.
do that.
Well, I'm going to start by answering that question. So there are two parts to that question that I
A
heard.
hundred
So
percent.
yeah,
Yes.
so one is okay, what makes a good sales leader? So
Hmm.
you can look at numbers and you can look at all the quantifiable results that you want to.
Hmm.
But to me, a good sales leader, a good sales manager, a good sales influencer, fill in the blank there, is going to be somebody that brings out the best in the person that he or she is interacting with.
Hmm.
And I think by doing that, the numbers will by and large take care of themselves. You'll have to obviously do a little bit of technical work, sometimes maybe a little bit more technical work. But if you are really working towards getting somebody to come out and say, hey, look, by working with Alayna, working with Skip, working with Joe Schmo, all right, that helped me bring out things in me that I didn't think was possible.
Yeah.
That's going to be the mark of a good sales leader. To answer the second part of your question about, hey, how many cold calls does it take to produce X amount of widgets, right? Well, the fact remains that there is no set formula for that, which is why
Hmm.
individual coaching is really, really important. There's a lot of different options out there, especially in the mortgage business and real estate, that offers a group setting. You do group learning and that kind of thing. And that is vital and is very, very good and very beneficial. But nothing's really going to substitute the need for one-on-one coaching to get to the bottom of what you as an individual need to succeed. And I think that's the biggest thing, because not everyone's prescription is just like medicine.
Hmm.
Not everyone's prescription is going to be the same. Sometimes you may need A, B, or C to help you with the outcomes that you want. Just like we as salespeople need to focus on our prospects and customers' outcomes, well, it's the same thing with a coach and client. Coaches need to focus on what outcomes they want so that they know what to prescribe for them and help them go through it. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
It does. I mean, success looks different to everyone, right?
Mm,
What success is to me is not mean the same thing for you. I know there are people that I have a friend who sees me post on LinkedIn all the time and he's like, why would she do that? Like, that's crazy.
yeah,
But he, draws trees and like does landscape architecture. I don't understand his job at all. And his job sounds like a nightmare to me.
there you go.
Um,
Well, you don't want to draw trees like Bob Ross over there?
I don't think so. I don't think it's for me. I have terrible handwriting and I very
Okay.
little artistic
Okay.
skill.
Noted. I'll cross that off the list then.
Yeah, I have to be bad at something, right? Um,
Nice. Very good. Well done. Well done. So I'm sorry
um,
to interrupt you.
it's okay. So, one thing I really enjoyed about your podcast is I think you do a really good job of kind of pushing further into a topic with your guests and really trying to drive home, what makes that person unique, what makes that person different. And you kind of said, we don't need to talk about luck, right? Because there is always luck in the salesperson's journey, right? The people that joined the industry during COVID, right? At some
Mm-hmm.
point, you're lucky because you are an order taker.
Right.
Um, but how do you think that attributing luck is selling yourself short? Um, or what are your feelings about it?
Well, from someone that loves to go to Las Vegas and play some tables, I can appreciate some luck, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like the old quote says, the harder you work, the luckier you get, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's something to that. You may have good timing just by
Mm-hmm.
happenstance, or you may see an opportunity and be able to take advantage of that. But at the same time, there's going to become a point in time in which you've got to put your cards on the table, right?
Yeah.
You got to say, okay, this is what I've got. This is what I can do. And if it's not going to be enough to sustain the business in the manner in which that you want to do or have been doing, or
Mm-hmm.
or plan to do, then you've got to take steps necessary to sharpen the saw, right? And that's really where the coaching and continued learning kind of comes into play there. People who, I mean, you and I may look at somebody and say that they're lucky. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, or one of my favorite analogies is you look at an athlete on the field and say, man, they just God bless them with such amazing skills,
Hmm.
because we see them on the field with what's being produced. What we don't see are the countless hours and numbers of years that have led up to that point of
Hmm.
grinding out work. So what some people would attribute as luck or God-given ability or whatever,
Hmm.
the case may be, you got to remember that there's a lot that goes into it that nobody sees. So yeah, I think people who have had success and it gets attributed to luck. There's something to that, but there's still going to be some hustle, at least
Oh,
a little.
100%. Well, and I think I kind of equate it to increasing your odds, right?
Absolutely.
When I play, I'm a roulette player.
Oh, see, there we go.
Um,
Now we're talking.
so if anyone goes to, Vegas shows or anything like that, that's what I'm willing to gamble on.
Alayna
Um,
may or may not have had some time with me at the MGM casino. Okay, I'm
yes.
just saying that may have taken place. Okay.
But I'm a big fan of one of the biggest things you can do in roulette is really playing the board and expanding upon your options so that every time something hits, right?
Yeah, you're
You in-
increasing.
you're
Yeah, you're
you're
increasing the average.
increasing that.
Yeah.
So I think there is something to be said about that, right? Is
Hmm.
every outbound call, every lead in your pipeline, right? Not all of them are going to close,
No.
but the more that you have out there and the more things you have in the fire, you can definitely close more.
Yeah, and
Uh,
Alayna, one of my favorite quotes from a very well known sales trainer. His name's Jeb Blunt. He's put out a
mhm.
number of books. He's very well thought of. And if you haven't checked out his works, you definitely need to. But he's got a phrase that he puts in almost everything. In fact, he's put it on merchandise even, that says one more call. That means when you're
Mm.
tired, you're done. At the end of the day, you're like, I'm spent. I got nothing left in the tank. Make that one more visit, dial that one more number, send that LinkedIn message, do one
Mhm.
more, and you never know how much more that will increase the odds of you getting a successful, contact back.
No, I mean that's a great saying,
Yeah,
honestly. Um, and one thing I really liked about our conversation is you talk a lot. You do a whole series on women in the industry
yeah,
and in all of that, and I really appreciate that. As true allies are fantastic and something that every underrepresented group needs, to give them that space. So, how are you making sure that, as you grow your sales business, you're kind of seeing those underrepresented groups or people that are maybe are less likely to give themselves credit that they take it?
yeah. So I want to start off by saying just a very brief story. Being a 42-year-old white male,
Hmm.
it doesn't get a
We
whole lot
all
more
we all
generic.
know it, right? Like
Yeah,
it
it
is what it
doesn't get a
is.
whole lot more generic than me. But it's funny because I was sitting in a banking conference, and several people have heard me tell this story before. And it was shortly after I grew this, so it's been a number of years. I didn't have as much gray in it, but it's been several years. So I was sitting in a banking conference, and a speaker was talking about diversity,
Hmm.
and he was looking around the room, and he pointed to me and said, "Well, folks, this is the most diverse person we have in the room. He's under 40 years old and has a beard." Like,
Mm.
that's a problem. That is a
Yeah.
problem that we have in the financial industry, banking and mortgage, etc. And that's one of the reasons that I really like to encourage um, the diversity inclusion talk on my
Hmm.
show or just in my interactions. You and I were corresponding before we came on the air talking about a sales influencer named Cynthia Barnes,
Hmm.
who I've had on my podcast, but that's her whole life is dedicated to improving that diversity in sales.
Hmm.
It's very important because diversity of sales creates diversity of thought, which creates more possibilities, which in turn can create better outcomes for everybody. So
Hmm.
it's a chain, and encouraging those connections is what's really really important. And you're right. I started the series Women in Mortgage during my first
Hmm.
season during National Women's Month. And I did it again this year, a little bit late, but still around the same time. And it's just really interesting because there have been some very influential women in my life, and I think that largely it doesn't go unnoticed, but it goes understated. And I think bringing
Hmm.
that more to the forefront, be it any minority group, is very important. And so that's one of the reasons I really try and focus and encourage that.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up here today, I will give you a chance to promote yourself. But first, I
Oh
have to
goodness,
ask our favorite question.
which
Um,
is
we are at Lodestar here. We are all about celebrating things and people and things that inspire us in our day to day life. Lodestar is a guiding light in the night sky.
mm.
What guides you in your career and in your life? You can make it personal, you can make it professional, totally up to you.
So one of the two things
Okay.
on this. All right, I have got a tremendous fear of being average and not leaving a legacy behind,
There we
and
go.
that's one of them. And then the second is my family drives me
Mhm.
and makes me want to be the best that I can be. It's not always possible. It's not always easy, but it still drives me to try as hard as I can every day.
That's beautiful. Fear is a good motivator, right?
Well, my clients will hear me say you should never let fear dictate your actions. But at the same time, I do use that as motivation.
You know?
Hey, whatever
Um,
works, right?
I think
Whatever works.
it's about wanting it, right? You want to
That's
leave a
right.
legacy behind, and that's not a bad thing.
No,
And I think that's also a great thing to admit. I think there's a lot of people that say wanting that is could be selfish or anything like that, but that's something personally I think is
well,
so
it's
great
not
to
for
say
me.
out loud. It's not.
It's for my family,
Mhm.
for the people that I touch in my life. I mean, I want somebody
Exactly.
to succeed and say, hey, you know what? Do you remember working with Skip? That was awesome. So
Exactly.
that means I helped somebody, which is
You
what I
want
want.
that impact and
Yeah, yeah.
improvement, and you
The
want to feel
impact.
like you touched that life,
Yeah,
and that's
legacy does
great.
not always mean money. Legacy does not always mean money.
Yes.
It can mean any number of different things. So
100%. I'm fully agreed with you. So Skip, as we wrap up here today to hit our timing deadline, where can people find you and what can people seek you out for?
okay, so you can find me on any number of places. The best place is going to be on LinkedIn. You can search me Skip Willcox with two L's. You can also search my company, Kairos Sales Group. That's Kairos Sales Group. You can find my podcast also on there at Big Skip Energy Podcast. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook. Uh, I'm pretty hard to miss. So, but if you want to reach out to me, you can always reach me at skip at kairosalesgroup.com.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Skip, for joining us today. And if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, share this with your friends. It's how we really get out there and how we continue to grow as not only a podcast, but also just our reach and really being able to share these great thought leaders with you as listeners. So thank y'all for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Alayna.
My pleasure.